Hi, everybody. I'm Sunny, and this is We Gotta Talk, a live weekly digital talk show and podcast where we like to dig deep. Real talk, big topics. Now, let's dig in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to We Gotta Talk, an episode aimed at the parents and the parents specifically of older children today. We're talking all about mental health as it relates to college life, university life, the process of applying to college, what it's like for a family unit, and especially for the students after they get accepted somewhere and they're beginning their new life on campus and taking on all sorts of additional responsibilities. And so we're kind of continuing on the mental health theme. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're really making an effort this month to focus on some amazing experts from AdventHealth who are helping us as family units sort of get through these crazy busy times of our lives. So today's guest is Betty Varghese. She is a licensed mental health counselor with AdventHealth University. She counsels students in their medical programs. She helps them with work-life balance, with maintaining their mental health, and essentially getting through what is otherwise, Betty, a really, really stressful time in life in college. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we were chatting a little bit beforehand, Betty, and there's so many aspects of mental health that intersect with higher education. And we're going to walk people today through all the different stages of the stressors that are involved with college life, right? From the application process, which we'll speak generally to what it's like when you get in. I know there are plenty of parents out there who want to make sure that they're arming their kids with the type of information that they can kind of like care for themselves when they're out of the home. And maybe there's people listening who are just embarking on that chapter of their lives and they're like, wow, this is all new to me. So we're going to kind of touch on it all today. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I want to start at the very beginning. I am about to be 42 years old. A lot of my listeners are in the general age bracket where we're old enough where things were drastically different when we went to college or applied to college, but not so old that it was like a completely different thing. But I will say, in leading into a conversation about mental health and university or college life, the first thing I always think about, Betty, is the application process. And hearing parents these days talk about how stressful it is and how this becomes a stress on the entire family unit. And oh my gosh, it wasn't like this when I applied and I handled my application all on my own. And why do they need so much these days? Can you speak sort of generally to the stress that's involved in pursuing higher education before we even get to campus?
Yes. First thing I want to say, you do not look 42.
It's the Botox.
You should share some of your tips. I think the difference is, when we were younger, it was when we did it, it was like, you just had to do it. You moved on and there wasn't that much talking. Like your parents had certain expectations of you. And, there wasn't, now we talk more to our kids. We're more open with them. It's not just like, do this because I told you. We kind of explain why. And I think this new generation, the Z generation, needs a lot more hand holding. They need more help, and they will ask for it.
Okay, pause for one moment, Betty.
Yes.
This could be a conversation in and of itself. And I did an interview with this woman about all of Gen Z in general, and like the sort of stereotypes we associate. But why do they need more help? What is it about this generation that, I don't want to call it hand holding, but maybe I will just for the sake of conversation, needs a little more hand holding?
Well, I think we do a lot more for our kids than our parents did. We take, you've heard of helicopter parenting. We've had a student here that came and their parents had, and this was before COVID, that was a few years ago, where they couldn't buy shampoo. Their parents drove here to take them shopping, get them, buy them their shampoo and their kids. We have students
Stop
that come
it.
here
Betty,
Yep.
stop it. This can't be real. How
It
old
is
was this
real.
child, air quotes?
18. Just out of high school.
Good
We
God.
have students
Okay.
that come here and they don't know how to do laundry. They don't know how to grocery shop. They don't know how to budget.
Right.
So I think we are, and I'm including myself because I have a Generation Z daughter. I think we do more. However, I did teach her how to do laundry when she was 10, so she's pretty good with cooking and cleaning.
That's
But
good.
we have a lot. They want more. They expect us to do more for them than when we were younger. It's the whole society, and you'll see, and I'm sure you're hearing the kids saying, "Hey, they have no problem going for counseling," or they're like, "I'm anxious," or
Mhm.
they will encourage their peers to go for counseling, where it was
Mhm.
very different before years ago.
That's the upside, I guess. This upcoming generation is very well versed in topics that relate to sort of their internal world. And I think there's beauty in that. And in fact, like I told you this before we started recording, but we did an episode that's the last one on the feed before this. And it was another it was a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and we talked all about how kids are exposed to social media, which tells them all about neurodiversity and the things they might be struggling with. And so they have this really rich inner world, right, where they're more aware of their well-being and health. But as they relate to the outside world, there might be some differences, and I don't want to crap. I think I
Absolutely.
was rude on the shampoo comment. I mean, I have been buying my own shampoo proudly since I was about 7, but
That is a true story, though. That is a true story.
that is wild. But I mean, you're right. It's partially our fault as parents for helicoptering and for the anxiety that we sort of transfer onto them by over and micromanaging. So I don't want to be rude in that way.
Exactly.
But so when you do talk to I don't want to call them kids, but the young adults you're working with at AdventHealth University, and you're sort of counseling them through their issues, what are you hearing they're saying the general bigger stressors are once they're in and once they're
Well,
beginning to integrate into college life?
I think what we're seeing a lot of is anxiety, high
Mm,
levels of anxiety. They're not able to cope with so much external um, stressors, let's say, for lack of a better word. But
mm.
they're overwhelmed, easily overwhelmed. So when you have 3 or 4 classes and each class has homework and each class has tests, they're overwhelmed. They can't figure out like how to balance their time to get these things done.
Mhm. I
And
w go
what
on, and then I
what
have
I
a
was
comment for you.
yeah, I was gonna say a lot of things like, us as parents, they bring, "Oh, this is so good." And then I think another part of now that I'm thinking of when we were different, it's like the kids are always on the go. It's either they go to school, then they're in some kind of sport, they're in
Mm.
some kind of playing some kind of instrument every day. There's never downtime.
Yes. Okay, this is where we want your expert advice. How much is too much? And Betty, I can make a whole interview about this. Overscheduling, over high expectations,
Yes,
the belief that if you're doing an activity, you should be the best in it. No, you need to go be a horrible t-ball player
yes,
before you decide what you're. I mean, why are we like this? And what is that magic number of activities or that magic formula for making sure that we're not overscheduling our kids and therefore making them, I hate to put it this way, but less useful or less sort of practically intelligent adults?
yes. I mean, I wish there was a magic number, but I think you got to kind of go with your kid because each kid's different. Their needs are different. And are they enjoying what they're doing? Do they want to do what they're doing? A lot of times we're like, well, this family, the Joneses, they're doing this, and this. So then, you know what? My kid needs to do this. I mean, I
Hmm.
know people who put their kids in Kumon because their neighbors were doing it. Does your kid need Kumon? I mean, that's just
Right.
one more thing.
Right, right. So when you talk, I'm interested actually to hear from the college students' perspective too. Do they ever have a moment of reflection where they're like, I realized that maybe I'm like this, or maybe I'm stressed from small things like shampoo shopping because I never had downtime as a kid, or I never learned life skills. I mean, like, are they reflective in any way
Yeah,
on
yeah,
how they
I
were
think they
raised?
yes, absolutely, absolutely, and a lot of times you'll get, "Well, this is because of my parents is why I'm like this." So then when they're in counseling, it's like, "Okay, all these things happen to you,
Yeah.
but now what are you gonna do about it? Because there's just so long you can complain or blame your parents. At some point, you gotta take responsibility and say, "This is how I'm gonna live my life now. These are the
Hmm.
decisions I'm gonna make to live life the way I want to, so I'm happy."
Hmm. And how do you empower them to do that? So if we're working with someone, or not working with someone, if we have a child who is going on to that next chapter at college or at university where they're going to have to, by virtue of being away from their family, take on more responsibility, what are some encouraging things that we can say to the kids going off to college, whether they're in town or out of town, to start taking responsibility for those things that aren't taught in school?
Yeah, I think first thing as a parent, just listen to your kids.
Hmm.
Be encouraging, be supportive, encourage them to step out of that comfort box,
Hmm.
and do things that are uncomfortable because then it'll become uncomfortable. I mean, it will become comfortable, and they'll get used to it and they'll learn how to do it.
Hmm.
So, and I think we forget sometimes as as parents, we want to take care of our kids. We always want them to have a better childhood than we did. We don't want them to have to, go through all these things that we did, that were expected of us. So we don't have them do so many chores. We don't have, so then they don't learn. But our job really, and it's kind of it's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is you want them to be independent, but the hard part is when they are too independent and they don't need you, and then we have to deal with that.
I mean, it is kind of sad. I always joke I'm an overdoer of parenting because it's like kind of nice to be needed, but then I'm
Yes.
like, oh darn it, I'm like making them less productive at the end. But you're right. I mean, that's probably something good for parents to think about too, and sort of approaching how we raise them as they get to that college age is okay. When do I need to pull back for their sake?
Yes, absolutely.
Are
And
you?
also what you were
Go,
saying with the college admissions and stuff, we need to
mm-hmm.
separate our anxieties and our feelings from them and not put it on the kids that, hey, they must be feeling like this. No, they might not be. We're feeling this way as parents.
So let's talk about more about the application process itself and
Mhm.
just the general stressors that are involved. There is a lot of parental investment. I'm just going to say this with a minimal side eye in like where their kids go to school, and there's a level of prestige associated with help the parents out there divorce themselves from the need to live vicariously through their children. Counsel us through that because that is a big part, it feels like, of college application process these days. Well, my son is going to go to blah, blah, blah on a partial X scholarship. My daughter
Yeah.
is la, 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 la. Talk to the parents. Speak some sense into us, Betty.
Well, yes, we have so many expectations for our kids, and I'll tell you, when I chose to be a counselor, that this is probably one part of life, my one time in my life that I just fighting my dad because he did not want me to be a mental health counselor. He's like, "You're not going to make any money. You're gonna," he wanted me to be a doctor or he's like, "At least be a nurse." And my mom's a nurse, and she did not like that. At least be a
At least that is
nurse.
not nice. Yes.
So sometimes we've wanted to do things and we couldn't, or we weren't
Hmm.
able to, or our parents didn't let us, and then we want our child to do these things. So
Hmm.
we have to let them make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and let them be who they are, and not just like an extension of us.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's like the dads who are like we're ball players and they're upset that their kids don't want to play. They want to be a music, play music or something. And the child senses the disappointment and then they themselves feel as a failure because they didn't do what their father wanted or what their father expected.
I agree. I think one of the biggest sort of like low grade disservices we do to our kids is calling them our minis. Oh, this is my mini. No, no, no. We don't need another you.
Yes,
Like it's, and I know it's sort of like a fun way of like describing, our kids, and I've been guilty of it, but I do think kids absorb that feeling of expectation and that, okay, well, my dad I know he really wants me to apply to his alma mater. So I'm going to do it and I'm going to, but, but yeah, that's a really good point to reflect on is just kind of making sure that it's about who they truly are rather than who we want them to be, right?
exactly. We want to
Do,
let them be who they are. And because they also develop this internal like conflict of who
mhm.
they really are and who their parents were. And which child doesn't want to please their parents or want their parent approval?
That's so true. Well, as people are going through, and again, I want to stress you are working with students as after they've been
Yes.
admitted, and we will speak to more of the student work life balance. But just to kind of round out the discussion on the application, so we can have some useful information for parents who are in this stage of life, how much do you suggest they actually help with the application process?
So here's what I want to say. I want to say, listen to them, really listen. Don't butt in, like listen to listen. Don't listen to respond. So listen actively. What are they telling you? What do they want from their college experience? What do they want to do? Then encourage them. We want them to be independent. So yes, make some, reminders. Are you doing your applications? That kind. But don't be like, oh, you know what? Today is, May 1st. Aren't those applications due? Didn't you do this? So we want to encourage that. Independent is kind of a fine line, but at the same time, we want to support them, but we want them to learn more independence because there's going to be a point like that senior year, they're going to be going away after that, and you want them to be able to take care of themselves.
That's like a high stakes thing though, Betty, is like
Yeah.
not reminding them of a deadline. I'm like
Yes.
sweating already being like, oh, I mean, like, but how much can I help and get my hands in there? I mean, should you do anything again, bearing in mind that the ultimate goal is to raise a really responsible
Well,
student
but
when they're on campus?
exactly, exactly. And see, do they want your help? Do they want you to
Mm.
remind them, and go from there. And then and like you said in the beginning, it's very different than it was. So guide them, but don't act like you know anything, everything, because it's different. The SATs change and then they change back. I mean, there's so many different things going on. So
Mhm.
guide them and don't believe everything someone tells you, because someone's gonna be like, well, my kid did this and that might not be true. So always check if that's accurate what you're being told. Like from the school or other resources. We have, with the internet now, we have a lot of resources at our fingertips.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. So let's speak to, say, we're helping them narrow down the places they might want to attend. And what do you think about weighing in on what they're studying and how to help guide kids, I guess, find what it is that they want to spend their
Purpose and
next 4
passion.
years doing? Yeah. Bearing in
Yeah.
mind that, like, my personal belief, I would say this as an aside, is the best thing I ever did was change my major, 3 times. I'm not one who believes you should know what you want to do at
Nope.
17. My
No.
gosh, no thank you. But
No.
there are children who do tend to have like a real great
Yeah.
idea. So how much do we try to help them figure that out, if at all?
I think that is a great place for parents to help them. Like, I think one of the best things is shadowing. When
Mm,
students come here, like they know they want to be in the medical field, but they're not so sure what they want to do. So we recommend a lot of shadowing, and we do help some of our kids find places where they can shadow. Um, so that I think is really important. That helps you see, what does this person do? Is this what I want to do? And I'm
mhm.
with you. I tell students, I'm like, sometimes it takes 1 to 2 years, of being in school to figure out what you want to do. That's okay, because pretty
Right.
much those first 2 years you're just doing your prereqs.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. So they're in college, or they've gotten accepted into a program or something that they like and they're interested in. Tell us about what it's like adjusting to campus life. Like you said, regardless of how they got in there, the
Yeah.
level of involvement of their parents in that process, they're there now alone and they're figuring things out. What are you hearing most with students that are coming in to speak with you?
They are, they're not used to being away from their parents for this
Mhm.
long. And well, it goes two ways, right? So there's those that are like, oh, I'm free, and then they go a little crazy. And then there's the ones who are sad and they miss their families. So it's kind of, even that is kind of keeping a balance. Okay, we don't, you're here for school. It's your priority, not going out, not making friends. Well, making friends, but not, always being out with them, but having time to study as well. And a lot of them will contact, they'll call their parents, or I think a lot of parents do call and I think that's really important. Keep calling, call your kids, um, see how they're doing, check in on them, keep it, light, so they're not feeling
Mhm.
additional pressure.
Yeah, sort of just touch in, make sure that they're doing well, but resist the urge to swoop in and like do their laundry and come visit.
Exactly.
My mom helped me with laundry
Yeah.
freshman year. I mean, I was technically only 20 minutes away, so guilty as charged. So what other sort of, you spoke a little bit to the trend of anxiety in general that you've been um, sort of helping students through. What is the advice you have for them when it comes to managing schoolwork
Exactly.
and the load of work outside of their
Mhm.
personal lives? And it seems like there's so many more resources available today than there have been in
Yes.
years past. So talk a little
Yes,
bit about that.
and people are more free talking about their own, anxiety or other issues and sharing. But as for college, I'm a big proponent of having a planner, and we tell
Mhm,
students, hey, put in all your, go through your syllabus, put in your test dates, put in your homework, and then put in your non-negotiables, your class times. Some of them work a few hours. Put that in, and then work around. Now work backwards. So you have a test on Friday. When are you going to start studying for that? So
mhm,
Monday, put in like Monday, 30 minutes. I'm going to study for this test. I have a homework due on Thursday. Well, I'm on Tuesday. I'm going to do this homework. I'm going to put the space in. So that helps with a lot of the anxiety, because you see the whole picture of the week. You already know what you're going to do when.
mhm, mhm.
That helps a lot. Number one thing for anxiety: exercise. We encourage our students 5 days a week get exercise. There's so much research behind
Mhm. For stress management. Yeah.
it.
I know at Advent
Right.
Health University, you guys are focused, like you said, in the medical field in particular. Talk a little bit about the stressors that are unique to that field or to other particular areas of study. And I think anyone who's been to college knows that stress is relative to the amount of work you're doing and maybe the program that you're in. So speak specifically maybe to that group of students who's looking toward that field for their careers, and
You
what's
mean as
unique to that?
are you you mean like to for medical?
Yeah, for medical.
I don't. I think it's kind of the same for all
Mm.
college students. Um, the only one thing that we do see is sometimes when students are here and they are in clinical their first day, we've had students pass out, or there's a cadaver lab and they can't, that kind of stuff. But I
Hmm.
mean, the stress, the kind of things they deal with are kind of the same.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of scheduling issues. What about this is a big thing that I noticed my new college friends experiencing my freshman year was like uh, just generally managing health. I mean, you hear about people going to college, and the food is different, and the access they have to different, like you said, types of exercise, or like the body changes. Everything sort of changes all at once. So to someone who's about to make that change and go to college and realize, okay, my whole routine's about to be disrupted. I'm going to a place that might not have mom's home cooking, and it's not going to be as easy for me to stay on my regular schedule of fitness and exercise. How do you help them adapt to their new environment?
And so we talk about, how can you, is there a day to do meal prep? And fitting in, when you're doing the scheduling and looking at when you're going to fit in that exercise time. And sometimes, I tell it's fine. I mean, it's finals week. I encourage them to eat a balanced breakfast, but balanced meals, but I don't want them to be stressed about what they're eating. That's just
Hmm.
another stressor. So, kind of do what they, but it all goes to planning and working with them on creating plans for when are you going to do this, and looking ahead, not waiting till the last minute, but being prepared and organized. I think it really helps a lot. We have one of our students has a crock pot, and so she doubles everything she cooks and then freezes it for the days she is in a test or she can't cook, that kind of stuff.
That's so responsible. I just kept like an extra box of cereal in my dorm room.
And I think we have a really small campus, and in our housing, they have full kitchens. So, and then on campus, we do have a cafe that they can get lunch and stuff at, um, or pick up food and snacks like that.
Oh, that's oh, so they have access to things that college dorm rooms of the past.
Don't they have a kitchen? Yeah, I think it might probably be easier if there was like a cafeteria in our housing, but so they have their own kitchens and they cook. They have roommates, so they some of them like take turns cooking, that kind of stuff.
Ah,
Um,
that's really interesting.
yeah,
Okay, when I spoke with our friend, the child and adolescent psychiatrist from Advent just a couple of days back, she mentioned this um, national mental health epidemic. And we spoke at greater length about this in that episode, particularly about the specific challenges that younger kids are facing. But are you seeing that also play out? I know you mentioned anxiety in particular, but this mental health epidemic, as it was called by the AAP back in 2019, I think she said, are you seeing that translate to what your students are dealing with outside of anxiety too? And the sort of additional point on that is, are we at a stage where we're just sort of detecting more about mental health in general, or is it really a bigger problem?
I think because of COVID, it is a bigger problem right now. Suicide for I want to say 15 to 24 is the second number one killer of for adolescents.
I
Or
believe it
cause
was
of death. I'm sorry,
third. I believe I
third.
just read that. Yeah. Hmm.
So our
Yeah.
numbers
Wow.
have gone up increasingly in that. So yeah, and I think that COVID being home, there were kids that were, they were already being abused, so now they're stuck there all day, right? And there's like people, domestic violence people. Think of those people stuck in the house all day. Like, what is going on? What has happened to them? So all of that plays in. A lot of people are now like became alcoholics. The drinking levels went up a lot. So that played a lot into what is going on today. And, not having graduations, not having that social component that we all need.
Hmm. Hmm. Are you seeing like a COVID student, for lack of a better sort of descriptive term, like a change in general? Because a lot of these kids would just be getting into college now who were impacted at the high
Yeah,
school level
yeah,
by COVID and lockdowns in particular. So is there a prototypical like COVID student? And if so,
yeah.
what particular things are they struggling with? Because we do hear a lot, like you said, about the impact of isolation on teenagers in particular. So how does that look when they do transition to college?
It is where math scores went down. A lot of the scores and stuff went down. So yeah, as these students are entering. I wish it's not typical. Everyone has different issues, but I think some of them have a lot of social issues. They don't know how to, and I think also this generation with their technology and the texting, they don't really have great social skills either. So
Hmm.
that's part of it as well.
How
Like
does
they
that look, Betty? Like when you say not good, like give us an example of like what it used to be than what it is.
it's even hard for them to maintain a conversation with somebody, maintain eye contact to um or they feel too shy to even go and talk to somebody, they don't they're not making friends when they're coming. It's a little bit harder for them
Wow.
to like relate to other people. They don't really know what to do.
So this really is a new breed of college student in a lot of
Yes,
ways.
yes.
Yeah. Wow. So where do you even start with something like that? Because I would presume that the student themselves is aware that this is a little bit
So
of
what
an
is
issue
going
for
on,
them.
and they want, yeah, and
Right.
they feel it's kind of normal for them, right? So you want to be like, no, this is what we want to do. So here, actually, at our school, we are a small Christian school, so we have spiritual. We have small groups, we have worship, we have so many activities for them as well, so they can
Yeah.
get together and talk and that kind of stuff. And we're
Let,
encouraging that.
let's talk about the impact of spirituality on mental health in particular. I know personally that like a meditation practice or a prayer routine has been helpful to me in times of high stress, but I guess it's different telling that to a college student who feels like they have a thousand places to be socially and academically. How do you guys at AHU sort of work in the component of spirituality and help explain the benefits of that?
So we have three chaplains here, and they do different programming. And when I talk to students, and especially if they have test anxiety or something, I'll tell them some like deep breathing, and then I'll say a quick prayer. It's not that it's just to calm you.
Hmm.
A lot of times, we feel like, oh, if we don't, if a prayer isn't answered, then why am I praying? Or students will actually say, hey, I used to be religious, but I'm not because of these things that have happened to me.
Hmm.
And a lot of times it'll be, I do tell them it's like it might not answer everything or go the way you want, but it'll give you a calmness and a peace that you need so you can concentrate and you can focus on the things you need to.
Yeah, run us specifically through what types of breathwork exercises might be helpful because it could be related to, something broader and more general about just moving and being in a new place and going to college, or it could be related to the specific test you're taking today or the particular stresses of that day. So, can you
Mhm.
give us some examples of some good breathwork exercises that have helped to center some of your students? Or not
So
students,
every,
patients, I
yeah.
guess.
So I always give the simplest form of everything. So I'll say I want them to inhale through their nose and then count to 4 and then slowly exhale through your mouth. And I'll say do that 3 times before you start a test. Another thing is it's basic grounding for anxiety, and this is like one of the simpler ways. It's called the 3-3-3, and that is look for 3 things in the room,
Mm.
listen for 3 sounds, and then either touch or move 3 parts of your body. And that's just to get us out of our head and into the present, to be like, okay, here I am, because that get out of that anxiety mode in our head. And it's just
Ooh.
basic grounding. So everything I give is I try to make it as simple as possible,
Hmm.
because there's all kinds of different techniques now, and they're coming up with all kinds of different things.
That's interesting. I like that. Just like noticing things. It's like using your
Yeah.
senses, sort of,
So
just to be present.
exactly to pull you in. It's just basic grounding. And I'll say like let's say it's a clock. What shape is the clock? What size is it? What color is it? Kind of stay focused on it.
Do you ever work with students who are having trouble maybe managing their screen time? And moreover, what
Mhm.
impact do you notice that screen time and social media in particular have on mental health? Because that is another new aspect
Oh
of,
yeah.
and I would call it a challenge that college students today have that we really didn't.
Yes, very true. Social media can be good, and it can be very bad for mental health.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of studies on how these posts that the students are seeing, and especially in our high schools and our middle schools, and they compare that to their own lives, and they're like, "Wow, my life really stinks." And the thing is, the fact is, nobody's putting out the negative things that are happening. Nobody's saying
Hmm.
my car was repoed. Here's a picture of that. Everything
Hmm.
people post are the positive things in their life. So it always looks like their life is perfect.
Hmm.
But but it's not, because I could look at you and think your life is perfect. And but you, only you know what you're struggling with. And that's what I tell
Mhm.
students. I'm like, you can look at me and say, oh, she's a therapist, she's got everything together. You don't know what's going on with me. We're assuming because of what we're seeing.
Right, and
So
they
it's like
grew
the
up
whole
with that
picture.
technology. Their brains have been conditioned to
Yeah.
think that the status quo is like the filtered Instagram image, or these
Yeah.
days, I guess, TikTok video and things like that. It's that I would imagine that that presents some unique challenges to you in your
It
practice.
does. Even my own daughter will take breaks from social media because she'll see how it's affecting her. And she's like,
Yeah,
I need to stay focused on myself. And she'll take breaks.
I do think that one of the biggest gifts we can give our children who are being raised in a digital age is like the gift of like hiding the iPad, or like
Hmm.
literally physically removing it, because without enforcing that type of strict like restriction, I guess,
Hmm.
they don't know how life can be without it, because their brains are like trained to
Absolutely.
continually check their phone and to continually check their social media for that little dopamine hit. So it's
Because that's their norm, right?
right.
That's normal for them.
Right? It's wild. It's wild. And do you anticipate? And I'm don't want to like ask a question too much where you have to peer into your crystal ball, but like I would be curious your professional perspective on the types of adults that'll make for the workforce eventually, and like are we raising a generation that is more mentally resilient because they're going to have to create these boundaries, or are we raising a generation that won't know how to face reality because they're going to stick their face back in their phone?
I hope it is. We're raising resilient workers, that they see, hey, I need to make change, because they're aware. They're aware of their feelings more than we are. That,
Hmm.
hey, this is what I'm feeling. I probably should get help for this.
Yeah. What encouraging signs have you noticed as you're working with students at AHU, and sort of patterns or things have you noticed as we're coming out of COVID and coming out of that period of isolation that make you hopeful that mental health in general is improving, especially among the college age set?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's because they are in touch with their feelings, and they are like, hey, I don't want to feel like this, and
Hmm.
there's got to be a better way to deal with this. And they're coming for help, and um, they're open to working. I mean, we still do have that, that stigma about counseling and mental health, but I think this generation is just so much more open. And they'll
Hmm.
scream down the hallway, "Hey, Betty, our counseling session," because before you don't hear that kind of stuff. Nobody says anything,
No.
and I'm like, you don't have to put your business out there, but they're so welcome. Or they'll introduce me and say, "Hey, this is my counselor," and she's been helping me with this. So that
How
they're so
awesome.
yeah, so they're so open.
Yeah, I do think one of the biggest gifts we can give each other, whether this be adults or kids, and even talking about younger children who are getting therapy or getting counseling for a particular issue, like the biggest gift we can give is transparency sometimes.
Yeah.
And like it's a fine line, because with social media, we run the risk of oversharing and putting information out there that can never come back. But I, for one, have always been very open about the fact that even in quote unquote good times, there's no good time in anyone's life that's ever permanent. I have always worked with a counselor who's helped me through work issues and transitioning out of a professional life into a new chat. Like there is so no shame about the whole process, and I just love hearing that this generation is open, not only open about it but proud about it.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And I do tell students, like, what if when you need a car mechanic, or we'd say that about tutoring too. Don't wait till the car breaks down. Go, beforehand, so it doesn't break down. So you get it before it breaks down.
Yes, I love it, and continue to share. Let's talk a little bit about the AHU family connection. An interesting point that research is now showing parental connection helps a college student succeed, which kind of flies in the face of what we've like sort of anecdotally thought, which is like, oh, don't tell mom and dad anything because like they don't need to know what they don't need to know. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit more about that?
So that helps parents know what's going on campus, what events are going on, and that it creates more of a connection. And they can talk to their kids about, what are the not just events, and what are they going through, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of informative articles and stuff that goes out through there, and it's just kind of a support for parents. And that's another thing about this generation. I think they're so open, like
Mhm.
what they tell their parents. Like my child is so much, she's so open with me about what's going on there, where I would never ever tell my parents that
Oh, I'd
you
love
know
to hear it. How old is she again?
she's 21.
Okay.
She's
Okay.
21, but I remember like when she was a senior in high school, and she's like, "Mom, it's senior skip day," and I said, "Well, I'm not giving you an excused absence. I'm not." She's like, "I just want you to know, I'm not going to be in school. This is where I'm going to be in case anything happens."
Oh
Like
my
I
gosh.
never would tell my parents that. I would just do it, you know.
Oh,
So
that's so funny.
she's very open with the things she tells me, and I try not to be judgmental and be jumpy, or because there's some things you're like, what?
Mhm.
Because
Oh,
I
yeah. I
do
mean,
want to
it's
keep that
one thing to
communication
say that
open.
it's one thing to say, "Oh, like, no matter what, you can always tell me anything," and then you hear
Yeah,
it and you're like, "Oh god, what," like,
yeah,
it's really hard to hear the truth sometimes, but I love
yeah.
that she's open like that with you.
Yeah, especially I was in middle school and high school, I wanted to have that open communication just
Right.
so that she could be like, "This is what's going on," you know?
And what does that tell you more broadly about the college student these days? The fact that this research is showing that connection helps. I mean, does it tell us that our kids are always looking for a way to connect, but maybe just aren't able to eloquently say that, so they're acting out instead? Like, oh no, from a broader perspective, what does that tell you about our
That
kids and what
is
they need?
that is a good question. I think they just need us to listen and to be encouraging. And yes, we do have to be parents. I'm not saying don't be their friend and don't punish them or give them consequences, because that's how they learn, right? Not consequences. But just being there for them and letting them know no matter what, you love
Mhm.
them, no matter what they do. Because we when we're growing up, we say, "Oh, you're a good girl," or no. I mean, you're always a good girl. It's not that we make bad
Yep.
choices. That doesn't make us a bad person.
I love that. I feel like that's great advice to sort of round things out. And before we let you go, Betty, can you just give us that one more bit or a couple more bits of encouraging advice for parents entering this chapter and for students entering this stressful chapter, but exciting chapter? College is
Yeah.
the beginning of the beginning, really. And
Yes.
any tips on not only stress management, but also like enjoying the moment because you only get to do it once.
Yes, I like to say, sometimes we see a sunrise or a sunset, and we're so busy taking the picture, we don't enjoy the moment. So now I don't use my phone when I'm with we're not taking pictures. Enjoy the moment, be in the moment. College is really exciting. It's an exciting journey. It's confusing. It's like a roller coaster. There's ups and downs. So enjoy it. I mean, and even the admissions process, it's like that's something you do. You're not going to do it again, and you're not going to do it with your kid again. So with that kid anyway, if you have other kids, of course, but just enjoying and being together, being supportive, and that last year. I mean, things will be different right after that. Once they go to college, things is never going to be the same, no matter what. It's never.
I'm
So enjoy
crying.
it, do things together. One thing I will say is, as far as do your taxes on time. That FAFSA you got to do that paperwork all the time for the kids. That's going to help them do your taxes on time and help them with that FAFSA, so they can, with whatever school they're going to go to. That is kind of time consuming for parents.
I love that practical advice. And don't write their application essay. Let them
Don't
do
write them,
their
yeah, and don't pay someone else to write their essay
Yeah,
either. Make them
don't
do it.
yes, do not take that work away from them. It's a
Yeah,
growth opportunity. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, oh gosh, Betty, you've been a joy to talk to. Thank you so much for
Oh, thank
sharing
you
your
so much.
yeah, thanks for sharing your wisdom. And for those of us who want to connect more with AdventHealth University, I know there are a ton of great programs there.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about how to connect there and how to find more information about what you in particular are doing there.
Yeah. Well, our you can check out our website, and also, if you call the school, our main number is 407-303-7747, and you can talk with an admissions advisor. They'll walk you through the steps. We have a nursing program. We have all medical programs here, and then we have nursing, radiology, which is a lot of the medical programs. Or if to use as a stepping stone, you can get your bachelor's to go into medical pre-med, to go into medical
Mhm.
school.
And we just got the news alert that came down ahu.edu, guys.
Yeah,
And we thank you for educating the future caretakers, the caretakers of
thank you.
tomorrow, and taking care
Oh
of their
yes.
mental health, Betty. Because if there's something we learned, it's that if we, especially in that particularly stressful field, if not are not taking care of ourselves, we're not taking good care of others. So, um, you guys,
Absolutely.
yes, and Advent is just doing such amazing work in the general space of mental health. And like I said, it's been a real pleasure to partner with you guys because you're an organization and you work for a group that prioritizes the health of its people too. And I think that
Yes,
goes right on down to the patients that you treat. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Betty. And thank you guys
Bye.
for watching and or listening to this episode of We Gotta Talk. I hope that that provided some good perspective. And, regardless of where you are in your parenting journey, or if you're someone who's applying to college, I just feel like that was very timeless, evergreen advice from Betty on how to do things the right way. So thank you guys for listening. Please do leave a rating and review. If you haven't already done so, just open up your podcast app on your iPhone, tap 5 stars, leave a positive rating. That really does help these interviews to get out to people who might find them useful in some way, especially parents. And that's it. We'll be back next time on We Gotta Talk with more good stuff. See you guys soon.